That's something everyone. It is Tuesday, January 18, 2022, 6 p.m. We are in the lower theater. There is a Zoom link on the agenda if you have it. We will have an issue for executive session tonight. There will be no action taken and there will be no comment made thereafter coming out. It's just an informational update for the board. That being said, I'd like to call this meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes of January 5th, 2022. There are about 3 or 4 copies on one page in here. If everybody noticed, but somebody got a little ambitious with a copier. That's okay. So I'll take a motion to adopt the minutes.
When will we adopt the minutes from January 5th?
We hear a second?
I second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the minutes of January 5th. Any further discussion, corrections, additions, deletions? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Carries. Additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting. I have none. Scott?
No, nothing here.
Anyone else? None, seeing none. Go to public comments on items not on the agenda. 3 minutes per person. Anybody? I have one, just to make a point of clarification. My wife was perusing the Facebook site that says the future of Bellows Falls, and on it, very disturbing comment made about me on there, which we'll read it, quote unquote, it came from Dallas J. Hanson Strongbow. I was quite disturbed to find out that Peter Golick on the Rockingham Selectboard is a seditious anti-democracy Trumper who posts treason all over Facebook. What is the process for removing him? It's unfit. I know I'm a little overweight for my size, but that's okay. This was done in conjunction with an indigenous people post that had showed up on that website. And I assume that's where this name came from. We tried to Google it, couldn't find anything. And getting a hold of Elijah, give him credit, he did pull it off and block the poster. But just to make things clear, I do not participate or subscribe to any social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Tweeter, whatever you want. I'm not a Trump person. So seditious, you might want to call it that, but I am not anti-democracy. So I just want to make it clear, whoever is out there doing that is either having some fun at my expense, or perhaps this person has me confused with someone else of the same nomenclature. So I just want to post that out there and make that clarification that it's not me, whoever's posting those things.
What we call Facebook troll. Someone with a fake online identity.
It could be a fake name, we don't know. So,
You didn't write anything on Facebook, right?
pardon?
You didn't write anything at all on Facebook?
No, I don't subscribe to it.
That's weird.
Well, that's what I thought at first. I mean, my wife reads that stuff. I don't. The only reason she pulled it out was because there it is.
Oh my God.
Peter, before we move on, there was one person, Kathleen, in the.
On public comment?
Would like to comment,
Kathleen, did
so-
you have a comment that you want to make on public comment?
Yes, I would. I am calling in regards to the Great Falls Regional Chamber. We, of course, are the town's tenants at the Welcome Center. We enjoy the beautiful building. We welcomed over 9,000 visitors last year during COVID, which is pretty amazing numbers considering lots that happened throughout the year. And I think we sent out several hundred packets to people interested in our beautiful area. And so we just have a few safety concerns that we would like to address. There are several people that have keys to the Welcome Center and the door is frequently left unlocked. All of our chamber records, sensitive members information is there, all of our computers. And so I think that's something that people that have keys are going to need to be careful about. The bathrooms have been frequently left unlocked. And so that gets us in a situation where the fire department is getting calls in the middle of the night to go address that. Then one other safety issue would be someone from Rotary Club just almost had a really bad fall. The steps are not really cleaned, things aren't shoveled. So those would be some items that need to be addressed. And for some reason, there's been a big breakdown in the last few weeks of the bathrooms not being cleaned. I think for several weeks, trash not being emptied. And I think the town had said that they would do a cleaning inside the Waypoint Center once a month, and that has not been done. So we would love to have kind of a longer discussion about the Welcome Center, perhaps put into the agenda at a later meeting. I think we could utilize the Welcome Center in a lot more ways, but the chamber certainly appreciates being there. And these are just the first few little concerns that we would love to have addressed. Would any of you have any questions for me?
We know who has the keys. Perhaps we should just recall all the keys rather than change all the locks on the doors.
Well, unfortunately, we had asked that there be a kind of I think we've gone through this process and had a lot of keys that have been taken back. So I have a key, which I never use except occasionally for a Rotary meeting. Deb has a key. Gary Fox has a key. Some folks from the farmers market have keys, and they're great folks, but not always responsible in terms of locking up. So I know in Deb's case, she is like, will drive off in her car and be like, oh, did I lock up? So, I mean, she's always like double, triple checking. So I don't want to really point fingers. I'm not sure who's forgetting to lock up, but it is, it could be certainly a serious problem.
Definitely. As far as the cleaning goes, I don't know. I've heard a rumor that Don Hashem has been ill. I don't know what
Okay.
he's got, but that may be why the thing is not getting cleaned. But if that's the case, I think maybe Scott can enlighten us on that.
He has been, he's been out sick. He's at home
Oh.
recovering. I'm hopeful that he'll
Okay.
be back.
So I think sometimes it's just communication. If you folks know of it, if you could just shoot Deb or I an email, that would certainly be helpful.
Glad you brought this up.
Okay. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the manager's report. Scott?
Thanks. I'm going to jump over here real quick. So these are some photos that Elijah has taken, and we're trying to come up with something for the cover. So I'm hopeful that maybe tonight members can come and just give me some feedback. I can't pick. There's too many options here. So yeah, exactly. So I'm going to rely on your better
We all take a
nature
dart and
to help
they all
me
agree. Majority rules.
come up with the appropriate cover. I think they're fantastic. I think any of them would be wonderful, but I just thought, there's some really good shots here, and it's just personal preference, quite frankly. I think they're all appropriate and wonderful, but I'll leave that up, and maybe you guys can just give me some feedback, and we'll move forward with whatever choice you have, because I think there's no bad choices up there. So that's why that is sitting there tonight. The second thing is, again, we have a request from the person who opens and closes the station at the Amtrak station. And she's sort of our caretaker, and she's an artist, and she's asked if she could display some of her artwork inside the station. She has provided me a permit. I've talked with Gary. He feels very comfortable that she's very responsible. Is not the type of person that's going to create some problems or create a situation that's uncomfortable, that she's a very good steward and representative of the community. So if the board doesn't have any particular concerns or problems, I certainly don't see it as a downside, and certainly it'll help us make the space a little more colorful, a little brighter, and, help support somebody who's already supporting us. So those are the two things that I had.
I'd assume those are gonna be for sale, I guess.
It will be for sale.
I should have them outside, normally. Sometimes.
I think she does. I also think she does the farmer's markets. She does some other things. So I mean, she's got a local following, so. But, you know, since the space is kind of a high profile area, I just wanted to bring the board's attention if anybody has a concern or a question, if they want to
Yeah, I
talk to
think
me.
it's great.
It's beautiful work. So, okay, those are the two primary things that I had to,
What's that?
I'll say.
All right, let's move on to the main agenda, and the first item is the appointment to Rockingham Conservation Commission. There is a letter of request in your packet. Also, there is a letter from the Conservation Board also recommending this person. So if that's, everyone has read that, I would like a motion to appoint this person.
I move that we appoint Christine Armiger to the Rockingham Conservation Commission.
I'll second that.
Motion being seconded to approve the appointment of Christine Armiger to the Rockingham Conversation Commission. Any further comments, questions?
Yeah, just Thank you for all.
She seems like a perfect, really great background for that. kind of
Yeah.
That being said, motion been made and seconded. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Now, review the proposed 2023 budget in your packet. And there is a memo from manager as to how we would like to approach the use of the fund balance.
I guess as a starting point, I just wanted to follow up because I know we've talked in previous meetings about where we stand with fund balance and where we are in relationship to our policies as well as other transactions. Spoke with the auditors again today. We're still not, they're still not completed yet on the transfer of the items that we talked about that was previously posted incorrectly to the town fund. So I wanted to at least give you that information again in the memo. And because of that, I think it makes more sense to, as we go forward, look at splitting our potential contribution from the town and highway so that we don't potentially drive the general fund balance to a level that would be more difficult to replenish if we needed to. The second item is we did submit the first 4 of our 6 projects through FEMA. So we're in the process of review. And as I described at previous meetings, it's going to be an extensive review. So I really don't have a sense of when we're going to see that money approved and then coming back to us ultimately. We have 2 more projects still to go. And then ultimately, we'll have the full approximately 660,000 out for review and hopefully approval for reimbursement. At which point I think you'll see some improvement in our highway fund balance as well. So those are the 2 primary moving targets that are really impacting your decision this evening. I just want to make sure that there's any other concerns or questions before we're finished with the final pieces of the budget.
Correct.
The ARPA funding for infrastructure, how will we work this into the plans for the coming year?
We've got the proposed public process to go through for the next 2 months, where we're going to have a series of public meetings as well as meetings with the board to go through projects and look at a potential ranking and priorities. We're also working with some of these projects we want to put through the state ARPA process first to see if the state will fund these prior to us looking at our local funds to fund it. So with those things as a contingency, and we did not program any ARPA funds in this current budget. As we talked, we don't have to obligate our monies till the end of 24. I don't believe we have to spend it until I think our final expenses of as far as 26, I believe. So we have time.
So would that money relieve, could result in a surplus if it comes through?
The money that they program for ARPA, I think they were very clear. They don't want to see it used as a general fund surplus or a tax relief. They want to see you apply that towards projects. I think there's really a sense that that money is working capital. And so I think the feds have been pretty think one thing they've been consistent about, and, you know, with all the rules and regulations, is that is one thing they've been very consistent about. They want to see that money spent.
Are there any projects in the pipeline that would be considered shovel-ready for ARPA?
Well, there's 6 or 7 priority areas that they want to do. So things like housing investment, climate change investment, infrastructure. So there's a ton of things that we can look to apply the money for. Stormwater improvements, but all of those are also eligible for the state monies, which is why we're trying to see if we can get into the preferred state ranking on some of these projects before we come back and recommend that maybe we go through a local process with some of that.
You and Andy kind of looked at what down the road 2-3 years, or I guess 1-2, we have to spend it within a couple of years. What kind of new projects we might want to?
Well, the one that comes to mind immediately is if we don't get hazard mitigation money for some of our culvert resizing because of climate change, I think we're going to have to spend some of our local money to do some of these culvert replacements and upgrades. And
That's
what-
not hard, that's not what you can use ARPA money for, those culverts. Or
It
is
depends on, well, it depends again. I think it's eligible under the climate change because it is a potential use. We're trying to do that through the state monies first because we think that's a more appropriate use, but if we're not successful, that might be one avenue we'll talk about. So it's a little bit frustrating to do all of these major replacements and spend the kind of money that we spent on this last storm and then, you know, 6 months, a year, 18 months from now, the way we've been going through these storm cycles, watch some of these roads wash away again. So that would be a little disappointing. So there's a host of things that we can use, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to do the process, is to have an opportunity to get public input, get the board's input, start the program accordingly.
So that process would begin in February, March. What would?
We're going to have them come to our March meeting in our joint meeting, and then we'll hope to have the follow-up and finishing up by the May meeting of the joint boards. So there's a series of public meetings we're trying to schedule. We'll have a full schedule for you coming through.
Thanks.
Anyone else have any comments? None. Has everybody had a chance to look at the budget? Not much numbers change, and the only difference is the use of the fund balance, which is $100,000 from the general fund balance and $100,000 also from the highway fund balance, which will leave us with a savings of $0.01 on the tax rate. We will reduce the current tax rate by $0.01. So are there any other comments on the budget? Any further comment on using some more fund money to reduce the thing any further? I know Scott is, but I'm just throwing out last chance.
I think
Anybody can comment?
as long as we're in that, I mean, both of those scenarios bring both funds in about 25%, correct?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
22
You're in
minutes.
a healthy position, but unlike anything, you know, we are waiting on some federal reimbursements and I don't anticipate problems, but it's always better to make sure we have the money in hand as opposed to not.
As long as it stays in that range. Sometimes.
Well, I was just thinking maybe 25 more from each one, which will add up to $0.01, but that's it. Yeah, I'm just throwing on the table. Nobody is interested. in-
What, take more out of it now?
Well, we take one, 25,000 from each one, so 50,000, you know, it takes $0.01 to raise 50 grand.
I
So,
see some concern over there from our finance director.
but the only problem we got is as Scott has mentioned before, we're still waiting for the auditor's decision on that misappropriation of the town and village fund there. So once that comes off, that might have a little bit to do with it. So,
In what kind of way?
well, because there's 200 some odd thousand dollars that was
Deposited.
belongs to the village and what got stuck into the town instead.
So are
So,
you already backing that out of it?
No, it still hasn't been approved. That's why
Oh,
it's in the current fund balance.
so we gotta work around that. So the other factor that comes into this is a couple of the 3 articles on
right.
the warning of the plow truck, which is a 3-cent item, and the railroad station, which is another $0.015, and the 22,000 for the Rockingham Meeting House is another 0.5 cent. So we could very easily, if those items pass, be adding another 5 cents on, or 4 cents with the 1 cent we got, so we'd be back where we started from, so. But that's a chance you take, you know, it's either up or down, so it's Australian ballot. Can't make any adjustments. The budget is what it is. We need to adopt that budget tonight. And then we can adopt the tax rate as stated.
So if all, what will the tax rate be if all those articles?
We're right back where we started at 112. And that's including the use of the fund balance, because we're using it to
Right.
use it to a penny, but
Right.
if all those articles pass, it's 5 cents more going in. So the net result is 5 cents going in minus the 1 penny we're taking off, be a 4 cent increase.
Now, Scott, you said, the fund balance would be 24%. That's right, I mean, you said. General funds would be 24%.
Yes, roughly.
And now haven't they said that 15% is okay? Didn't
Well,
we-
you've adopted a policy, which I had attached, and that's,
Right,
you know, there is a current policy that the board tries to follow, but typically the auditors want to see you in the range of 10 to 20% roughly to
mhm,
feel confident. If you get below that, they start to look at,
exactly, but we're at 24, we're over that, right?
yes, right now, the way it's proposed, you would still be slightly over.
But if, for instance, one of those things passes, I mean, does not pass, like the train station, can we then, as a board, after, if there's money, when things iron out with all the fund balances and everything, we know where we actually stand, can we then allocate that funding, or does that have to go to town meeting?
Well, you can appropriate money as a board as you see fit. So if you pass the budget and for some reason an article doesn't pass and you still want to continue on with that project, Gary and I have talked about this. There are ways that we can do that, where we can combine other money and try to make that happen. And at that point, we're hopeful that we'd have a clear, well, we would definitely have the general fund and the prior year's audit complete. So we spoke to the auditors today. We're going to have the draft out well in advance of our February 20, or the meeting of the 28th. So our informational meeting. Peter and I were talking about trying to have a meeting with the audit internal group on the 23rd. So by then we'll have a pretty good sense of where things stand.
I think that's kind of a funky way to approach it, you know, if the voters say no, well, we'll just,
It's a chance to take, it's just like the budget, we propose this budget,
right,
and with the Australian ballot,
I know.
in the past, we've been able to, you know, make adjustments at town meeting the night before,
right,
and
I
then vote
know.
on that amount, but
Right.
this year, it's
I
all
know.
Australian ballot.
So, I mean, if
It's
the
either
voters
voted
say,
up or it's voted
no,
down.
we don't want that truck, we don't want that train station.
Right.
We're not gonna pay for that. And then 6 months later, we come around and go, well, you know, we're gonna do it anyway because we think it's okay. I just know the kind of scuttlebutt I hear, it's not as bad as what you got.
It's a chance, it's a
But people say, they don't listen to us,
Mm.
you know, and,
Well, it's a lot of it's a sentiment vote, like the railroad station, you know, 5 years ago,
right,
it didn't pass either, because that was the
right.
sentiment.
But
We
I'm
don't
I'm
need
just
another
saying, you
building,
know,
you know,
what should our approach be? Here's,
So-
here's where we decide
but
what we're gonna
on
do.
the other hand,
This one's
we
the
just disposed of the YMCA, so that might have an effect on,
I think it will,
So,
I think it will,
it's all on how you present the article at town meeting,
right.
simple as that.
Peter, is there a possibility of increasing the draw from the general fund to 225,000? That would give us a little bit, we'd still be within the percentages of the policy set by the previous select board. It'd give us a little wiggle room when people say, how can you spend X, and saying, hey, taxes aren't going up.
Mhm.
So
Well,
Yeah, that's what I-
the
that's
tax-
kind of
the
the way
taxes
I
right
feel.
now won't go up unless those articles pass.
Correct.
Right.
If articles pass, then,
Tax
but
bill.
that will be explained at town meeting when you do your informational meeting.
right, but if would it be wiser to, I mean, I remember Susan, you threw out the $200,000 number. And now it looks like we have a little more room. Would you be okay with taking a little? more out?
Maybe a little bit more. I just worry, these things are still pretty much in flux. So I just kind of worry that, I mean, we're good. I mean, we survived Irene because we had a healthy fund balance. We've survived the storm last year because we had a healthy fund balance. Though what the auditor may say 10 to 15, I think in today's environment where all of these storms that have massive hits, I think we have to be 20 to 25. I mean, that's just my gut feeling.
You know, other communities took short-term loans to
Yeah.
cover some of their costs for their rebuilding. We were fortunate we didn't have to do that, but they have to obviously repay those, so there'll be a cost to that.
So if the FEMA money comes through,
Wait, one at a time.
I'm sorry.
sorry, if the FEMA money comes through, our risk is that the FEMA money doesn't come through. If FEMA money comes through, we're in good shape,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and I'd feel more comfortable then
Right.
adding to. I mean, it's a timing thing really is
Yeah,
what
you
we're
don't
at.
know. And
We don't know.
you know, I think the thing to do is to adopt the budget the way it is. And just mention that the budget will be reduced by a penny. And then at town meeting before, I think we need to get a press release out a long time before the town meeting. You know, I'm trying to explain this to other
Right.
tax implications the night before the meeting, because people are going to be voting absentee ballot and everything else. They don't have any idea of what's going on with that. So I think
Right.
I can write up a simple, you know, press release and get it out to the shopper and the reformer, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody gets those.
That might be a good, I
And
think
put
that'd be a good
it on
idea.
the website.
Yeah.
I don't know. My feeling is that in the name of being transparent about our intentions, it would be good to bring that fund balance down to 20%, which is considered healthy, and make that the budget, and then explain how this other stuff works in. I mean, that's kind of the way I feel. I feel like if there's a certain mood and people vote down these articles, and then we come around with our FEMA money and say, well, you know what, we're gonna do that stuff anyway. I'm uncomfortable with the way that looks to the voters, actually.
I think that's a good point to be made, and, you know, it does look like we're trying to pull an end run here, you know.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not comfortable with that.
Susan?
No, I mean, I agree that with that, but then there's things that I think we need to fund, like that truck. Then I would say, if we're gonna take more out of fund balance, take the truck out of the vote and put that in the budget, like it's been done in the past.
Well, that's
Or
another thing, too.
the funds that well, actually, we did do that as a special
Yeah, we
vote
did,
for the
yeah.
meeting house, right?
Yeah, right. That goes in the reserve fund. That's
The
what I
meeting
thought.
house one.
That's why.
But I mean, I would say, I would be more comfortable doing that, pulling the truck out, reducing it by, it might, well, I don't know if we can reduce it by 3 cents though, because I don't think we have enough for that. Yeah. it would be a
And make
million and a half.
that not
That's a
optional,
lot.
make that part of the budget. But bring the fund balance down to 20% to cover it. And then the train station, I got a feeling that's gonna pass, no matter what, if we can keep this tax rate lower somehow. That's my feeling, but I don't think we should sit here and say, well, we're gonna keep it low now, and then we'll just use the money later. I don't wanna do that, because I know that enrages people, and understandably so.
I do kind of agree with that, what you're saying, because it may not be that may not technically be the way that it really works, but that's kind of like the first way it could be perceived,
Yeah,
that it feels like people's votes don't
right,
count.
right. I mean, that's just not a good way to govern, I don't think, you know? I think we need to be transparent about what we're trying to do.
I think that's true with the train station and maybe the meeting house, but we need a truck. So I mean, that's why I'm saying,
Well, I mean, I agree with you, I agree with
As
you, yeah.
Scott said, you can plow with the truck, but you can't plow with the railroad station.
Yeah.
It's a little tough.
No, I think it's true. I think we need to have a truck. We need a truck, and we shouldn't play games with that truck. We should put that in the budget and cover it and bring the tax rate down. So the only thing under discussion, and I think that will be a very emotional discussion, and I think it will pass. Particularly because we just tore up down that church, and I think people will understand the importance of that. I'd like to see that put in the budget too, but maybe that's somewhat different, and maybe we have to let the voters.
No, I don't agree with that comment. If we put that in the budget, then, and the whole budget goes voted down, then we gotta go through the whole process
Right,
again.
no,
do another
I
vote.
think we have to keep that one
So, I
separate,
think
but I
we
think
need to
we
keep
should
that
put the stuff
separate.
right in there and cover it and take a little more of the fund balance. 24% is beyond healthy, according to what everybody says. That's my thought.
So, I mean, that would, I mean, I don't know if we have it. That's the one question, whether we have that 3 cents. If we did, I would move that what we took out of our normal, was it 250,000 fund or transfer that goes
It's
into?
275. is the
275?
historic transfer.
I would put that back to 275.
We have it at 200 right now.
Yeah, so that's 75, but do we have the extra 75? That's the question, I don't know. Maybe when we FEMA money, maybe yes, without that
Right.
FEMA money, perhaps no.
Well, going through the finances, I think there's money there that we could probably use to make up the difference.
Well, we're gonna get some FEMA money, for God's sake.
Well, we don't know when, though. I mean, it could be a year from now.
That's my concern. We
that's
just
the
don't know
point.
how long this is gonna take. It does take time. And they would
They
not give
don't,
me
they
any
don't turn
commitment
these
at all.
things around. I mean,
So I
Like
tried to say,
that.
would it be by July? Would it be by September? They would not
Yeah.
commit. So
so.
it made me a little concerned that I couldn't guarantee you that you'd have that money.
Of course, the other thing, if the budget, if the truck article doesn't pass this time around, I can't, that I just not gonna work either, but anyway.
I mean, I guess the one thing that I'll just say, and listen, we're all sensitive to the tax rate and taxpayers are, we have increased our support for funding paving in this budget substantially. So we did, historically, we had paving in the neighborhood of 500,000 to 600,000. I think we're up to 850 in this budget. So that's a substantial investment that the board has made. These investments are, it's like a cost benefit. We can look at all over the budget and have the same conversation about
Oh, yeah.
trucks, paving, things that people like as quality of life issues, the preservation of historic structures. I mean, they're all important. And it's just a question of what's the right balance with the fiscal prudence that I think is also being responsible.
Well, we've got the tax sale and we've got the payment for the solar array. There's two incomes that we,
Right, which are not reflected
not in
as
this
revenue, because again, the auditors told us you can't
Right,
reflect
I
that until you
understand.
receive your money,
Right.
so.
but I'm just saying to Susan's concerns and everybody's worries.
And then as Scott mentioned earlier with the truck, if the truck doesn't pass, then, as you just mentioned with the solar array, there's 50,000 there. That we could always put towards that and then do a short-term loan to make up the other
Right,
difference.
so I mean, it's not as,
And spread that over 2 or 3
we're not,
years. And
it doesn't look to me like
there's
we're,
ways to get around it.
like we're
so.
in that bad shape at all, you know?
Well, I think you're in very responsible shape. Again, the issue is always, there's always competing interests for money and for, and it's just, we just didn't have enough time with FEMA and with the auditors to guarantee you where we would be so that I could make a recommendation to spend that much out of the general fund or that much out of the
Right,
highway fund.
I mean, I understand.
That's where I've been conservative, and obviously you guys can, make other decisions, and I understand it.
Well, I would suggest that we probably adopt the budget as it is.
Can I just say that I just did some really quick math? That you're already taking 100,000 from the highway, and that's already part of the budget to reduce the tax rate. If you put the truck back in and use another 150 to cover it from there, you're gonna
Highway?
be, you'll be below 15%.
That's what makes me.
So.
And that's numbers, I mean, that's guessing numbers too, like we don't really know what
Right.
that fund balance is yet,
Yeah, so
so.
it's a turkey shoot, but that would be my inclination right now is to adopt the budget as it stands. And go forward from there. As I said, there's other options we can use to fund. We could take a loan out for the truck,
Well, here's the question.
there's other ways
Do
to
we-
get
do
about
we
it.
have-
And
Do we have to get, sorry, do we have to get the truck this year or can it hold off to next year if it doesn't pass?
Well, with the current the way that the inventory is working, we'd have to put the order in now to
Right.
get it within the next crop season. It's that far behind. Trying to get inventory.
All right,
So you'd be 2 years out on the truck. if you
So
wait.
by the time it gets around, we may.
Right, they
Yeah,
couldn't
the
even
money
get one.
to take care of it.
Right.
Here's a question, why does this truck have to be on the ballot anyway? Why can't we wait until we have some money and do you have to pay for the entire thing up front, or can you put a deposit on it?
I think that previous practice had been to take out these 5-year equipment loans and try to spread these out over time. And what was happening was, I think it was impeding on your ability to do, to take the schedule of replacement and try to keep it consistent. So we decided that to be fair, we would replace it when it was on the current schedule as needed and pay for it at the time that it was required. So it's a little bit of a change in philosophy.
Right, but we're not gonna get this truck for months and months. They're not gonna give it to us. Do you have to pay for it months before it's delivered?
I'll pay for it when it's invoiced, but we'll have to have an appropriation, and we'll have to have, at some point, we'll have to have an expenditure once we receive.
Right, but,
I can't go to a vendor and say, okay, I'm gonna pay you in 6 or 9 months, but I don't have the money.
I know, I'll pay you tomorrow.
I mean, I
but
can't do
have
that,
money
but it's
today.
not a great
I
thing for me to
understand
do
that.
eventually.
No, I'm just,
You'll
I
be very
just know
angry
that,
at me.
oftentimes, when you order something,
No, I know.
you put like 30% down or something like
right,
that.
So moving forward, why don't we try and, let's move with, Rick, go ahead.
The $250,000 increase in paving, that kind of just slipped by. And I mean, we had some discussions about it in the past. I had no idea that it was that big an increase over the normal paving budget. Anyway, we could dial that back a little. It seems-
Well, it was done, and I guess, again, the board, obviously, you guys always can make a decision, so I'll put that as a caveat. But the point of that being is on the digital pavement management plan, when you forecasted out your budget years, this year was a year that we had a major project expenditure drop off, which is the payment for the Broadway Mills improvements. So they were taking some of that money, which you were paying back, and applying that into payment. And then we have additional years going forward where we have enhanced payment. So it's part of that process to bring the roads up to standard.
So-
And, well, and also to answer that is we were off of our payment plan, and we were supposed to be putting 50,000 in a year, starting about 5 years ago, and we kept it steady.
Right.
This is catching up. So to the plan, if you follow our maintenance plan, our paving maintenance plan, we should have been taking that much money out of our budget this year. When we should have been taking 600 something out last year, and, you know, we were off in what we were paying in taxes on our paving.
Okay, so Peter, when you write your press release, the fact that we're making a really significant investment in paving, I think that should get some, a headline. And this is it's a big investment we're making in paving.
Well, two that, don't forget, part of that money is being paid for by the debt we're losing on the Broadway and Mills Road.
Right.
So that's $225,000 payment. So that added to that. But the other part is the anticipated price increase that raises the price up.
Correct.
That we have no control over. You don't know what, you don't have a crystal ball to tell you what fuel oil is going to be next week.
I know.
So it's the same with paving.
Oil hit a 7-year high yesterday, right?
So the other thing is, if we don't spend the 887, there's gonna be those excess funds that we'd be able to use for something else. I mean, we can take it out of that line item and throw it in by the truck source, if we're coming that short. You don't know.
Yep.
You don't know until it happens.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the problem when you get off of your plan, is then you get caught up in
Catching up
these
is hard.
situations. It's.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that again with our truck replacement schedule.
Right. You don't forget, you're gonna be another year, so you're gonna be looking at fire trucks and all that stuff that is on the replacement, plus the loader. I think there's a loader in there someplace, and that's like 2 years out, so we've got a little time to play for money for that, but
But you probably have to order that now.
yeah, that's another case where you
We
order
talked
it's a 2 year
about-
process
That's
to
gonna
get
be a
it.
challenge.
But,
It's not, it's a very interesting.
Try and buy a car today. You can't buy one.
Used car.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I think we've exhausted the discussion. So I think we need a motion to adopt a budget of $6,353,627 with the amount to be raised by taxes of $5,079,264. That will take care of item 2 on the agenda.
I'll second that.
I guess that was a motion.
Are you making
Oh.
a motion?
Okay, I move that we adopt the budget as read by Peter.
Okay, no problem, I can make it. All right, I heard a second. Motion been made second to adopt the budget of $6,353,627 with the amount to be raised by tax of $5,079,264. Any
So
further discussion?
So this means we're just gonna go ahead with this, and if
As
we don't
proposed.
get our way, then we're gonna just go ahead and do what we wanna do anyway.
No, we don't,
Well,
we're not saying that.
we're not saying that.
I know you're not saying
That was a proposed, an idea that was proposed. It doesn't mean that the board has to swallow it. Okay, that's just an idea was put forward. If
Right, I know,
if
I know.
things
I'm just
fall by
saying
the
that-
wayside.
That's,
Just clarifying whether that was a possibility. I'm not saying, suggesting we do that.
And
Right.
Just a
who knows, maybe
clarification.
there's a
question,
gift horse out there that's gonna flop with some money in our pocket. Who knows?
you know?
But anyway, all right, motion made second to adopt the budget as presented.
July the 20th.
I just want to say, I think if we're really clear and upfront with people and we really let people know what's going on, even if they haven't been watching these meetings, I think people will get it, I hope.
I hope so. I mean, because
And-
I hope so.
And I mean, the other thing is, I mean, this is the grand list as of now
Yeah.
projection. That could change completely and it could reduce our tax. I mean, with the way property's been selling, that could change. We don't know.
There's a
There's
lot
a
of
lot
things,
of, unknown
Yeah.
questions. So I think
Yeah.
the safer way we handle it, the better. That's just
Right.
my opinion.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just an optimist. I see a lot of potential, a lot of unknowns that could go our way.
Yeah.
That look like they're headed our way. And I personally, I'm not sure how we're gonna vote, because I'd be a lot more comfortable being very forthcoming and taking a little more out of this fund balance and being transparent about what we really think needs to
One
happen.
thing is if we don't, take it out of the fund balance now and we do get, some nice chunks of money, if the FEMA comes through, we get the solar money, all these things come together, then maybe we can put it towards next year and, reduce that rate again, So I mean, it's not like, if it's extra money, it's just, it's always gonna be in our favor, it's like we hope we have some extra money next year to take the tax rate down again, so we don't have to add this extra $200,000 that we've taken from the general fund, basically, and try to make that up in taxes next year, like on top of everything, So,
Okay, motion's been made second, it's on the floor. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Okay, aye.
I'll say
The motion carries. Item number 3, you propose tax
Wait,
rate.
we have a-
Gary is.
Gary
has a quick question.
Yeah, sorry, just didn't want to interrupt the budget vote, but just to the point, was well made that if it's a different situation if the voters vote down something. And so I just wanted to just correct the record on this, that the train station was never voted down. The TLR buildings were on the warning for town meeting 5 years ago. The train station has never been voted on by the town. It hasn't been on the warning.
Right, I know that.
Okay, so well, there was a statement that we once voted it down 5 years ago. I just,
Oh,
I made that statement. I'll go back and check my
Okay,
book,
thank
but I'm
you.
pretty sure that was the case, Gary. But anyway, that being said, let's move on to the proposed tax rate. That is signed in from you at 10783. Do I have a motion to adopt the tax rate at $1.773, 1073?
We usually do this, adopt,
Huh?
I thought we usually adopt this even though it's,
Yeah, we adopt the tax rate.
I thought we just did that in July, but yeah.
Well, the
Well, we do
final
it for
tax
now,
rate,
when we
adopt the
actually
tax
bid,
rate as
there's
it's
other
presented,
changes.
and then if it changes in July, that's when it comes out, because we don't even know what the school's gonna do.
Right. Okay.
Right.
No, I just don't remember doing this. I might
Yeah,
just be
well.
completely misremembering that we've ever done it at this
So-
point in time.
Here again, we need a motion to adopt a tax rate of 1.0783, which results in a 1 cent decrease in the tax rate from last year.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt the tax rate of $1.0783. Any further discussion? That being said, all those in favor would say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. That part of business. View the draft warning for the town meeting. There in front of you.
Couple of things from your last meeting. We did rearrange some of the articles so that based on the conversation that we had with the board. So Article 5 now is the item for cannabis retailers. So that then precedes the financial articles, which we've then followed through all the way up until we get to the two other articles for appropriation we just discussed. So those are Articles 9 and 10. And then 11 is the continuation of the Meeting House Reserve Fund. And then finally, the last set are Australian ballot. And just to be clear, because Peter had raised a question for me, I wanted to make sure the board knew that we can adopt this and then go forward if we need or want to create, if we're out of the COVID world and we're into a more routine type of annual meeting where we wanted to take people's floor votes and amendments, that we'd be able to do that even though we had passed this particular warning. So that's why I included the information for the Garrett Baxter, just as an update for the board's information.
Okay, so we will need a motion to adopt the town meeting warrant as presented. And do we have a copy of signing? Just want to give one of these.
Just grab one of those, Peter, just as easy.
I got one here with me.
Okay.
I mean, do we think well, people will show up for this meeting? I mean, if they do, I think the lower figure is not going to be big enough. Like, the reason
No.
we can't have it upstairs?
It was just the Wi-Fi and the internet was so spotty last year up there. I was concerned about doing that up there
Yeah.
again. So
So we probably want to encourage people to be on Zoom.
if,
As opposed
yeah,
to
we're still
coming
in
in
this,
person, so they
yeah,
could.
so I don't think we're going to be out of these types of concerns by our informational meeting, which is the end of February.
So did Zoom work all right last year up there, or was that?
It had some issues.
Okay.
We seem to be better here.
And what will, Ray Masuko remains the moderator?
He is for this meeting, yes.
Yes.
Okay. How will he manage the traffic between the people who are present, and the people who are online?
Well, hopefully with the owl, we'll have a better way of handling that. So I think last year with Zoom, it was a little bit awkward and there was some people in the audience didn't feel like they could participate as fully as they wanted to. But as you could tell by tonight, when somebody puts their hand up and there's a way to recognize and have, I think it works much better. I think people are a little more comfortable doing it. So I think we should be okay to balance those two concerns.
And has Ray been checked out on what the plan is for this year yet?
Ray's been out of circulation for a while, recovering from some surgery, but he's back now. I talked to him last week, so I think he's ready to jump in. So we'll walk through this well before the informational meeting.
So if there isn't room down here, could you stick us up there and make this all seating audience?
Yeah, there's lots of ways that we can reconfigure this.
Yeah,
I think last year we had 40 some odd people on Zoom, and maybe between the board and a couple of members of the public, we might have had 15 in the auditorium, if I remember correctly from last year's. So,
That's why, you know, the need to get the information out
right,
early enough so they can see it, with absentee voting and everything else, and if we get a press release out, then I think that should be what cover it.
Yep.
And so we need a motion to adopt the town meeting warrant.
So moved.
Second. Made and seconded, adopt the town meeting warrant as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Prior to the meeting, as in the past, we all get a chance to introduce one of these articles. So we can split them up before we get to town meeting, or I can assign them. That means that, you know, you can, some of them are just boilerplate, like the town elected officials. The other thing, like the project article should be addressed. The other ones are self-explanatory. We will have someone address the railroad station. I guess Gary's got something he's working on. You need to correct the spelling. I said C70 on Article 9 is not corrected yet. So you need to correct that before it goes into press. I'll look through this again, find it, blank quickly. And same thing with Article 6, that 70 is not been corrected.
7.
Yeah, you got 70, no T in it. Maybe coffee? No, come on.
It's funny, it goes through spell check. It must be a word somewhere.
And on
My
Article,
apologies.
I had 17.
So you don't really, you know, if it comes to a point and you don't feel comfortable addressing anything about Scott or I or someone will, you just need, you just have someone just reads the article and add the section. So.
That's supposed to say 1.2. That's supposed to be for the next.
one other comment. On Article 5, there's a question mark after 863 section. We can look that up on VLCT, but we don't want that to go up, just a question mark.
Well, I think that just.
Well, it's in the form of
question
question.
mark at the end of
There's
the.
shall-
Oh, okay.
shall
I see.
without a-
All right, so
That's the way that they wrote it up in the,
If you look at Article 6, the same thing, there's a question mark at
Oh,
the
okay.
very end.
all right,
that's the format that they wrote.
Anytime you ask me a question, just punctuality, I guess.
punctuation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Most of the other articles are the same thing. So.
Okay, good.
Okay, that's good. Review delinquent tax report. That's in your budget. We've been over this once before.
right. So there's a few things that are still, that we'll need to clean up before February. When we go out and start actually sending out the notices and starting the process. And I think we'll be making a recommendation to you. As you can see, some of these have been out of business for a substantial amount of time, and probably at some point you need to consider that as an uncollectible item. But we can make a series of recommendations for those. It really doesn't materially impact what you're going to be looking to try to collect. We have, again, encouraged all the people to apply through the state program. And again, we don't have any responsibility or any way to know who has eligibility. But at this point, I think we've exhausted every avenue we can come up with for people that might be experiencing some sort of financial difficulty. So at this point, we'll be looking to take this list in February, clean up a couple of these items, ask you to basically take them off the list because they're not collectible, and then the balance will be sending forward to go through the formal tax sale process.
So when do we know how many people will be able to take advantage of that state program?
My guess is you won't know until we send out the first round of notices, because there's a whole host of, they have multiple 30-day periods to respond before we actually get to the tax sale. So if somebody's in that program, they're going to let us know very quickly that want to try to get themselves out of tax sale.
So our delinquent tax policy current is 2 years. You can't go after them if they're only out 2 years, correct?
That's what the current
Okay.
policy.
So,
$2,000 a year.
well, Alyssa, will you manage this process?
I will have something to do with it. I'm not sure how much at this point.
Okay,
But yes.
I'd like to recommend that there's people on here owing you $20,000, $18,000. I'd love to see them get the first attention. Biggest return on our money and not do the, people who owe $400.
Well, you have to be careful because the way the policies are written, you have to do it all or nothing. It's not, you can't segment.
I just meant sequence, like who goes first and who goes, you have to start somewhere,
I
right?
mean, they're all given the same basic notifications and the same basic
And
periods.
most people, when they get the letter, the first initial letter saying, we're going to send you to tax sale for X amount of dollars, if they only owe $400, they're gonna call you and they're gonna figure out how to pay it.
But our policy is 2,000 anyhow, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so we won't be going after anyone who's less than $2,000.
Right. I'll include a copy of the tax sale policy in our February meeting, so you know specific.
Now, are the ones that have the stars, are those people in, at one point, they were in an agreement? Is that what that means? Or is that just something, what's the star?
She has been in touch with them
Okay,
at various points in time. And then the ones that say agreement are currently active and in agreement, so they're in compliance.
yeah, because I mean, I think once people, we haven't had a tax sale. And many of these people, I think, will pay out once they know, and some of these are houses, I think, that are on the market. And so once they sell, then they will also likely clear up.
Right.
Yeah, what about these people like the chemical building? We're $10,000 on that. What process will work there, do you think? If there's people who own an asset that's worth a lot of money, they haven't paid their taxes in 5 years, but we're carrying them. We just-
We threaten to sell their property and then they pay it,
Good.
basically. Because if they don't, somebody's gonna buy that at tax sale.
Good.
Yeah, that's what.
And that's the way it works in Westminster. I've never seen
Yeah.
tax sale happen here.
Problem is that the people, that's been for sale, the last tax sale, and they got no buyer, no bites. Nobody wanted to bother with it.
Do people walk away from those kinds of properties?
A lot of them do, yeah.
A lot of
We got-
liability.
We've got a couple of them right now that on there, and the guy's perennial. He's been on there for several years he had 4 or 5 properties.
The town can
And
also
it's the
buy
same
it.
thing, just.
The town can buy it for what they owe in taxes,
And then we're stuck
And then-
with the liability.
tear it down if that's what they want, make a park, I don't know.
Right.
I thought we, 36 Old Terrace had been purchased and we did a tax abatement on that. didn't we?
We have a 2-year window to start construction.
Right.
Remember, they put a
Okay,
incentive in there for him to get building permits and plans and be able to start construction, so this will probably provide some motivation to either satisfy the tax lien or
okay.
get going.
And one last question, when Alyssa, you or Scott cut deals with these people about, we sort of make what do you call it, an arrangement or something. Is that the nature of that arrangement shared with us, or what's the next step of oversight on that?
I don't remember the board getting traditionally involved in agreements. I think it's pretty standard. If there-
Yeah, it's a standard, but I think what Rick's probably driving at is that the board isn't aware of any of them that have been violated. In other words, there's agreements made for a certain period of time. We don't know
Right,
who's made, if Joe Blow's got 1 year and Kathy so-and-so's got 3-year one agreement, they don't ever seem to get caught up because every year the taxes go and they're paying on, it's like I use an example, if they're paying $100 a month and they owe $3,000, they'll never get caught up. So we don't know what the agreement, it may not be a reason we need to be informed, but, if people are, I think they usually, if they void their agreement, then they're automatically dumped into the tax sale.
correct.
So we don't know that. I mean, whether they are or not, I don't know if that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering, because when we say an agreement has been reached, that could mean anything. And at select board, I would just love to know what that means.
Yeah,
Maybe do you think that's not within our purview stuff?
That's why we have him as the tax.
Sure,
guy.
I mean, I can always bring that information and update the board about it. Tax sale is a very, it's a tough place for select board members to sometimes be in, just because of the nature of it. It's very aggressive, it's very adversarial, and it can be unpleasant. But I can certainly bring you information and keep you up to speed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a neighbor too, you know.
It can be.
Yep.
It can be,
It's
like I
almost
said, it can
better.
be very uncomfortable.
Fair for.
It's not one of the more
elected
pleasant
people
things
to
that we do.
Not get engaged with that.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking we would intervene, just that we would know what's going on.
Yeah, I think we asked that, well, I think I asked that last year, I think about, do we know if anybody's, avoided their, or reached their agreement? If they have, then they automatically, the agreement's out the window unless they come back in and do another one, but they shouldn't be allowed to do another one.
Who
Just
enforces
because
these,
they-
the town clerk?
Well, just on the first.
Right.
They pretty much come through the finance office and they keep track based on what comes through for payments.
So who sets up the agreement, the town clerk or
Usually
the
it goes through the finance
finance?
office, the director, and I'll work with. Let's like,
They must already be set up. I haven't seen any.
right, we haven't had any new ones recently. So
So
we might get a,
basically
we might get a
Pam will
whole
just
host
keep
of
track.
people making inquiry and we'll just have to decide. That's always. an
So
interesting-
accounts receivable keeps track of it. They let you know if somebody's not
Yes,
keeping up.
and some people have fallen out and are now eligible for exit, so it does, it kind of goes both ways.
Mhm.
And we're budgeting for zero revenue from this because we're not allowed to budget for something that we
The
don't.
auditors don't recommend that you appropriate any money as a future amount until you actually go through tax sale, and once you receive the funds, then you can
And
obviously,
we can't put anything in this budget that we don't have.
but it will come into you as a
Revenue.
general fund.
General fund.
revenue.
But it will be a good year delayed,
It'll be
because they
some
have a
time.
year to.
There's a line item in the budget for delinquent tax.
Mhm.
So if you look at your, yeah, here actually. On your balance sheet, it'll tell you how much is owed in delinquent tax. So if people go to tax sale, or if they pay their delinquent tax, then that liability line is gonna come down. That receivable line is gonna come down,
Right.
because we've received it.
Good. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, that's that there. Let's move on to the grant proposal for 2022 passive grant. It is for
So it's.
cameras down there at the Waypoint Center. I
So
assume.
as Kathleen was mentioning earlier, there are some issues with the Waypoint Center. It's not staffed full-time. There are periods of time where people tend to hang out down there and create sort of a sense of concern. Given all, and we've had some vandalism on a few things that were a concern to Gary and myself. So what this would do is allow us to have a more robust camera system available so that we could keep track and have a reporting capability. So if we do have additional vandalism or other types of problems down there, it gives us another tool to maybe help sort of put an end to some of that. And really the goal is hopefully if we get the extra cameras up and we have that and make people aware that it will no longer be a place where people might want to congregate and might find other places. So that's really the goal here. It's just purely just an opportunity for us to see if passive would be able to help us with some of those funds. If not, we'll go and look at, there's other less robust ways that we can still get some coverage, but this would be a much more enhanced perimeter as well as interior program for us to keep a better eye on it. So
Got questions, Scott? Who would be monitoring these cameras?
they tend to record in 24-hour or 48-hour increments, and then they're uploaded typically to a web location. So if we had to go and investigate, we have the ability to go do that. So the administrator would typically have access to it, so Gary or myself, depending upon how we decide to set it up.
No
We
connection.
share that with the police.
That was the other thing, the police wouldn't have it. to
It's
take
not
it.
live monitored, it's really just reporting and then follow kind of system.
But it can be live, can't it? I mean, this seems very expensive for not live monitoring.
It can be put on a live feed
At the same price.
at the same price.
Yeah, because if no one's watching it at the time, and only if you decide to pursue a vandal, then you have to dig through the tapes to find that vandal. Right?
Typically, if there's a problem, we'll know within 24, 48 hours, because there's usually somebody in the building at some point. There's a decent amount of activity between the chamber or Gary or somebody down there, or the Rotary Union down there, but
There
You
are
don't want to
camera
pay somebody
systems
to sit and look.
sorry, there are systems that, where you get a notification, you have a zone and it says, there's the front door. If that door opens, somebody gets an email saying, your front door is open. Or somebody's been, so there are ways that you can set it up, that it can be, not that someone's sitting in front of it all the time, but somebody could get notified with an email that this area has been breached.
Right.
So then the police could be called to go check it out.
Yeah, so is that part of this?
I don't know.
Gary, is this your grant?
It's not my grant, no, but I did do some research on the cameras, and they do have all of that functionality. It can be set up however we wanted to. It includes bandwidth so that it can easily feed to mobile phones, to police departments. Have the motion, if motion sets it off, you can set it for hours. So like between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., if there's motion there, it sends a notification. You can set it up like that. You need to be careful. It could blow up your phones with notifications, like, every time a bird flies by or something, but it has all of the capability. However, management and police decide to set it up, however we monitor it, it has any capability that we want to do, and we can change it as we work with it and learn. And it does what we want, it doesn't.
Yeah, we're gonna invest that much, we would want those capabilities.
I agree.
So we have a camera system and it's not this expensive a month, so it has to be it has to have a lot of good bells and whistles that you would invest that much money.
That's one thing I'm wondering about is the monthly support on this is about $340, and the grant request is for 36 months of coverage. But what do we do after the 3 years? So, I mean, that is a lot of money.
It is.
So the 3 years is this particular, just getting quotes, 3 years is the contract, and when that 3 years is up, the cameras are paid for and the installation fees. So a lot of those costs go away, but and then a lot of the recurring costs of recording and storage as well. So you can manage those to a budget. There's different things you can do by only recording when there's motion. You can reduce the number of cameras that are actually recording if there's areas you need to highlight.
The police department isn't our realm. I mean, that's obviously the trustees' realm, but does anyone know to what degree the police department is interested or able to use this kind of technology?
Well, I think they're very interested because there have been times when there's been incidents down there, and without anybody witnessing things, it's very difficult to recreate or try to find out what really is happening. So I think they're interested in these types of installations. It helps them
Yeah, I would think so.
in their investigation and ultimately trying to clear some of these areas of just persistent problems. And to be honest with you too, Gary wants to invest some additional money in there with some new picnic tables. We've upgraded our trash receptacles and some other things, and we're looking to make some investment in that area. And our concern is we'd hate to see that defaced or graffitied or vandalized. Some of the things that we're looking to do for upgrades there are reasonably expensive and nice additions, and it would be very frustrating to see that go to waste, so to speak.
Plus, we have our charging stations down there now too, so I think having a camera system in place is important.
We've got that as well.
And the train station and the new pedestrian bridge, that whole area could be quite attractive in a few years. Not this bad now, but
And we could figure we have to rearrange the cameras once all that infrastructure gets modified. We can rearrange cameras.
Okay, so we need a motion to authorize the manager to sign any documentation and adopt the grant application as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? One word of advice, I don't know, maybe I made a mistake, but I assume that 339.94 times 36 months is supposed to equal the total you got over there.
No, it's just the max that we can ask
Oh,
for.
okay, because
So,
when I stood it that way, it
Right.
was a little bit more money.
I know.
Yeah.
right, no, they cap out it. I know.
About $18 difference. I don't know.
No, they cap out. the
Yeah,
amount that
okay.
you can ask for, so.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to approve the passive grant application and have the manager sign all documentation therefore. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Here's all that malarkey. All right, approve BCTV policies and codes. There's bunch of paperwork in your
Anytime the federal government wants to give you money, it's wonderful. But every time they do give you money, there's always additional requirements. And this sort of fits within that aspect of the community development block grant program. And so I think Gary can maybe walk you through some of the specific changes that are being requested of us.
Sure, so you approved this 2 years ago for all of the block grants that we have in place since then. They've added one more restriction on lobbying for any program that's using federal funds, and they put in some language at the very end of the form about if we adopt these policies, in that act, we're adopting a policy about texting and driving in town vehicles. That we prohibit texting and driving in town vehicles, and we encourage not to do it in personal vehicles.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the BCTV policies and codes.
So moved.
There's a second.
Yeah, it's already illegal to text and drive a car.
Yeah.
It seems to be a little redundant, but so be it.
We've been seconded, but on the signature page, who's not on there, but Stefan Golick is. I assume that's because that's who signed it the first
Probably
time
2 years,
around.
yeah, I'm not sure why.
I don't know
Oh,
why
wait a minute, why?
you put on here this long. Should have been on there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to change that, Gary, on the signature page.
Yes,
Stefan Golick's listed and Sue's not, so.
yeah.
So
How much longer are we here for?
Could be a little bit.
Yeah. we got it.
Okay, that's okay. Clean copy.
okay, now, highlight of the evening. Financials. Alyssa is here. I'm with Scott to answer any of your lovely questions. If anybody peruse the budget or the sheet. Anyone have any questions? Comments?
Scott, I have a question. We had discussed with the inflation being what it is, that the compensation for some of our we want to retain as many of our highway crew people as we can.
Mhm.
Has that taken any form yet? Has there been an initiative on that?
Well, we did just have a long-term employee just retire, so we're replacing him with somebody who's a little lower in the pay scale. And then we'll see how, as we go forward, if we need to make other adjustments, we're hoping to be able to do something within the existing appropriation, since we no longer have that higher paid employee in the current mix. So I think at the moment, we're not making any specific recommendation, and I think we can manage it within that appropriation, but if it turns into a bigger problem, then I'll come back to the board and ask for something.
We're still down in employees, correct? Or is that been filled?
We are currently full,
We're full, okay.
yes.
Any questions for Alyssa or anybody? No? You gonna let them off that easy?
She's been busy trying to deal with her others.
The only thing I'd like to do is just say thank you to Alyssa. She walks in, brand new finance director, I'm like, hey, good to meet you first day, let's work on the budget. She doesn't even know where the where the break room is. It's like, oh my God. So she didn't run out the door, so that's a positive.
Or
And I-
tonight, when we were trying
or
to change
tonight.
it at the very last minute.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, I appreciate it because it's a tough baptism by fire and she's been very, very helpful. So I really did appreciate all her work.
Yeah, thank you.
So she's been tremendous help.
Okay, there being no questions or comments on the financials, we'll let them off easy and move on down the line here to review and approve orders, bills and warrants. They're here. Anybody want to make a motion?
I thought that we approved the orders, bills and warrants.
Here's a second.
I'll second.
Motion made, seconded to approve orders, bills and warrants. Any comments, questions? No? Okay, going around.
Are you circulating that? The next agenda item, your next meeting is actually Wednesday, February 2nd. I just have a typo on that for January 16th. I don't think we go backwards. We normally have meetings. So. In case any of you
If
were
only we
trying-
could erase the last 2 years.
Right. It's definitely Wednesday, the 2nd of February, so just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware. I'm sure everybody was anyway.
Okay, we, agenda items for January 15th. It's not right.
No, it's February 2nd.
February
Yeah.
2nd.
You opened the agenda,
It was
I-
last week.
time machine.
You guys are going back in time.
Hang on, when the lights come back on, we're going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone have a DeLorean?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, agenda items for the joint meeting, that's in March, so we got a little way to go, but
All right, I've got one. The process for deciding how the 66 Atkinson Street lot will be, not the decision, but the process.
the last minute one.
Okay, so we took down the church, there's a vacant lot there,
Right.
and someone somehow has to decide what's gonna happen to that. I'm curious about the process that will, how that will work.
We've reached out to a couple people, the neighbors, obviously, in the school district, since they have the most immediate impact. And so they're both pondering options and potential items that they might consider. Anything that we look at going forward, we'll bring back to the board. So we're just getting some input at this point. We're not in any rush. He's still got to come back in the spring and do some additional seeding and some follow-up. So we're not 100% done on site, but I'm thinking by April or May, we'll be into, having these serious discussions about how you want to move forward on that.
And we wanted to allow the indigenous people to take a look at the site too.
And we've also asked, right, if to take a look and make a recommendation if they think there's something. So,
Okay, so there will be community, I mean, my question is, how will the community provide input to that process?
at that point, I would think if we had a couple of proposals, I'm sure the board would want to do some sort of public meeting, or so public input process, so we'd look to do something.
Yeah.
So at this point, we just don't have anything on the table, so.
I feel like it's gonna be a while before we get to that point.
Potentially.
Yeah, I see it as months away, but I just wanted
Yes.
to make sure, when someone asks me what's gonna happen with that space, I want to be able to say, well, you'll have a chance to suggest a park. or whatever.
Do abutters have first option, or is that?
No, you have first option because you own the property. Butters can certainly make suggestions and come to you with any type of proposal, obviously, but ultimately the board really sets that direction. We did reach out to the school district just because obviously it butts them.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd rather see it go to someplace that's gonna be on the tax rolls. I hate to You put it in the school, go to school, that pays no taxes, so it's nothing against the school department, but. Okay, other business. Oh, here, excuse me.
Yeah, so does the school district pay taxes if they lease space in a taxable property?
I don't think so. If
I think they do now, and I don't know.
the owner of the property would be paying the taxes, not the school.
Yes, gotcha, okay, yeah.
They do,
So,
they lease
you know, they're just leasing it.
So the property would pay tax.
Property would pay the
It's
tax.
held
Collect
by a
rent
private,
from the
right.
school.
But I mean, if they would have put a parking lot in there, I mean, that's not gonna, you know, or a playground, I mean, that doesn't give us any, that just means more money on the school budget. Because we
No,
got
that would
going
be
up with the stuff. So. Let's go around and play other business. Rick,
Nothing.
No, but
Bonnie,
Nope.
Roger. I have one, Scott and I talked about this earlier, in the town report, I don't know how anybody else feels, but I went back and looked through about a dozen of them that I have on my house. How they ran the budget page, they did not put in the current year budget, like the 22-year budget, and then show what was brought in at the current budget. They go back like 2 years, so in other words, you see 2021 and the items for that, it really doesn't tell them where the voters, where you stand currently with the budget you have now. I don't know if we want to change that venue to show the 22-year budget and where it says on the top, you know, actual, instead of saying actual, the year to date in there, so it'd probably be like the end of February, you get something like what we're looking at here, so people could look and see where the income is and where the expenses go. And then you would go, you know, put in the proposed budget for 23.
I think it'd be a great idea. Alyssa, would that be complex in terms of your generating such a document?
Yes,
It would.
because it's changes
it'll be out of
all
date.
the time. It'll be way out of date by the time it happens, by the time town meeting happens. So if it goes to print the end of January,
We'd have to do it as an insert.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other
It would be
option.
a boost
Scott
page, right?
suggested.
It'd be like a budget status report. We'd run it just like we run it for you guys, the financials, and it would just be an insert into the town report. So, but it wouldn't be in the bound section because it would be so out of date by the time we have the meeting.
The problem with that though is that the town report goes out at least a week or so ahead of time, so people have that time to look at it. If you give a handout of the information, not everybody that votes, seeing Salisbury Valley,
Right.
is gonna have that information to look at. So,
Yeah. I think it's kind of confusing for people. I think since we already, if we're posting the packets, but that information is available on, or should be available. I think all packets should be put up on our website, but that's another issue. But it would be available for people when it's printed in a town report, even as on a piece of paper. It seems people, I think it would be confusing because numbers change and things get paid in advance, like our certain things are paid, so we're 90% on something, but other things are only at whatever that year is. So I think for those people who want that information, it is available in a packet on our website. Should be, if it is, I mean, this one wasn't, but it was a holiday, but
I kind of think it's confusing too.
Yeah.
myself. It took me a few times to like figure out what that column was even saying, you
we
know?
would hate to have people think, oh, well, they didn't
Right.
even spend any money on this, but it's
Right.
something that we don't spend money on till June. you know?
Right,
So they
yeah.
might say, well, I don't want to approve that budget if they're just putting money in and not spending.
Yeah, it is confusing,
yeah.
you know?
Yep.
But maybe just day before the town meeting, put it on the website, you know, our website. I don't want to talk about it anymore, but we just don't use it where it was designed to use. But Just put that, just put a little link on the homepage and say, and the description of what this says, what it is, how it is a snapshot. If Peter, if you feel that some people are interested in that, and then make it available there. I don't think you should put something that's not completely up to date in that, town meeting thing.
That's why they used to put them in there, but as you know, the last couple of years, it's always been in there, it's non-audited, and people say,
Yeah.
how can you know these figures are right when they're non-audited? So,
But I mean, I think the problem was it wasn't, the unaudited ones weren't in there.
right,
I mean, not the current year.
right.
I mean, the current year changes, but both change, unaudited could change as well as the current year. Obviously, it's changing because we're in it. I think it's the more, once it's on paper in an official printed document, that should be ideally it. But, so if you have something that's not complete or changes, you don't want that in that format, in my view.
Okay. We all set? Bonnie, do you have anything?
Mm-mm.
Elijah, nothing? Anyone else? No, hearing none? Guess we need a motion to move in the executive session.
I can't read it because I have my glasses. so I can't.
I'll read it. Do you have a copy of it?
Yeah, you want to read number 2.
All right.
You only need one motion tonight. For that.
Yeah.
And Scott will have the information coming around to you.
Executive session is a closed portion of a public meeting is allowed only in certain
No,
limited.
Just read the article number 1, number 2 there.
To the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, but the public body must make a final decision to hire or appoint in an open meeting, and it must explain the reasons for its final decision. Okay, so I move that the board enter executive session to discuss number 2, which I just read, and state the corresponding statutory provision, i.e. pursuant to Title I, Section 313A2.
Here, a second.
Second.
Motion made second, going to executive session to discuss personnel issue. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. We will be in executive session shortly. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There will be no decision, action taken, or comments made at the end.
Record.